Changes to order 501. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes from the April meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, second? Second, Ann. Any discussion, any corrections needed?
It was one typo.
Okay.
All right, what's up? There was a T in V somewhere.
We can,
Can I give it to you?
Yeah.
Yes. It's a missing T. All right. Not essential.
In the word up?
Yes, okay. I'll find it.
Okay.
so, shall we vote on accepting the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? All right, opposed? Abstained will be me because I wasn't at the meeting.
That's right, you weren't here. Yep.
And public comment, is there anybody online that we know? Hello, hi.
No.
Okay, let's move into our business part of the meeting. I'm hopeful we can wrap up before 7 o'clock today. We'll see how it goes. I know that I'm kind of, you're just back and getting back in the swing.
And I'm first on the agenda.
Kind of an issue for you in April.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say first, thank you so much to Joan, who has started a repository for information about when folks are going to be away. Greg and I thought it would be useful. Fred, hi, there you are. Snuck in. Yeah, so Greg and I thought it would be useful to, we're working on a project that, one of the commission members is kind of the point person, and if you're going to be out of town, or if you're an expert in that area, and we're really thinking we'd like to be able to touch base with you before making some time-sensitive decisions, just be helpful to know if you're going to be gone for an extended period of time, not, like a long weekend or anything, but if you're going to be gone for a week or something, it'd be great if you give us a heads up, and, you don't have to broadcast it. You can just send a quick note to me or Greg or Joan, and that'll be helpful.
Great.
So we have a couple of people who've responded to that already, but a handful, so if anybody else knows their summer plans going forward, that would be great to share.
I can give them to you again. I didn't think I sent them to you. I wrote them down again.
But that was from your most recent one. And knowing you, you have more coming up.
I know you said you're going to be out for the Summer Fest, right?
Yeah.
Is Andrew really got? And I know we for you too.
Okay.
I have a week off.
All right. Yeah, that would be great.
We already will use this for planning,
Yeah.
because I understand that both Suzanne and Joan will not be available for the June meeting, so we'll have to figure out who to take the notes. I'll talk to Katie about if we can get a temp in here. If not, we'll. What's the date of the June meeting?
11.
So, Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about what's been happening with the Stewarts?
Yes.
And
Both Peter and Isaac attended a Forest and Park chainsaw training program over 2 days at the end of April. Both said how great it was, common knowledge, very insightful, great training and camaraderie. The first day it was pouring rain, but they did inside work and other things, and then the second day they were out on doing the tree stuff. I haven't heard much detail, just
yeah, I'm kind of curious if Isaac dropped the tree or not.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He sent his report late to me with apologies after I reminded him. There was no mention of it in his account. And he, so I don't know. I think he's a little busy and potentially moving with shortly.
Mm-hmm.
I had borrowed equipment for the training for him from John Lathrop. I did purchase a saw, and Evan was like the man of the hour. It's like, oh, whatever, okay, oh, it was just right there. It was like he was in the store with me. But just in getting the equipment for Isaac, it was edifying, so I could imagine what the training was. But it will require purchasing equipment for him, to be used by any other steward, including Peter, who happened to have been gifted by his family for this. But there are, chaps, a helmet, an ear thing, and a, visor.
We're getting this echo
We got
out.
an echo going on again, but sorry. Not that bad, just
Not
like,
for you.
he can hear it.
Oh,
You hear an echo when I'm speaking?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's the phone situation. Sorry to interrupt.
So, I don't know if I need approval to buy it, but it's a bit of a, it should be purchased.
Wait a minute.
How do you hear it?
Yeah.
Sounds like African drums.
horror movie.
All right, okay, we're better now. We might be better. Okay.
So, I could get some of that local, I could order some of it online.
Yeah.
But I think another consideration as to whoever is wearing the chaps and the helmet, that one point we had talked about the stewards sawing together. And, that if they come across it in their trails, they should, okay, note it, and then make a time to come back with somebody else, whether it's the other one or someone from the committee. But that doesn't seem to happen. They seem to do it on their own. It's certainly Peter. I don't know how much, Isaac frankly does on his own. But I think after the training, and Evan knows from it, and hear other stories, and that, Isaac may have felled or not his first tree, there's still consequences if you're not doing what you know what you're doing, and he doesn't strike me as the, you know.
Yeah, I don't think he's had a lot of experiences in chainsaws, and I absolutely agree. I think it would be really, despite his having attended the course, I think it would really be helpful for him to have Peter with him, just for safety's sake, and just to give him a little tip if he sees something wrong when Isaac's cutting down a tree. And
Did Peter take the course too?
Yes.
I know that CSBA policy is,
Because that,
you have to have, I haven't taken this for the course, but I'm on my trail, if I need a tree cut down, I can get someone of his, but they have to have two people there, whether one is, might not have to be, but just for safety, that helps out.
seems like a wise policy, two people.
Yeah,
So I will write them to say that if there's a tree that needs to be cut, that either the two of them go out, or Peter goes out with someone from, and ask any of us, especially you two, three.
Yeah, because one of the things that the instructor, those course emphasized over and over and over again was that logging, which essentially is tree cutting, is the most, probably the most dangerous work in America. I don't know of anything else that's quite as.
Are they felling trees or cutting trees that are
Well,
falling
it's
across?
felling trees, moving trees,
Oh, okay.
whatever. It's just getting wood out of the, lumber out of the forest. And he loved to tell stories about some of the horrors that happened. But if you ever saw an old movie called Sometimes a Great Notion, if you haven't watched it, and you want to see what logging is about, that's a good one to watch. But I think it's extremely important to have two people there.
So having said that, and I could certainly write them and saying, if you see a tree, mark it, note it, coordinate with each other or with one of you three.
Give them my number.
And, in which case, do we still want the same extra chaps and helmet and ear for
For the second person?
the second person?
I would,
So,
yeah, I would say yes,
just the operator.
interject here.
You would say yes, and they're saying no?
I would think, certainly a helmet for the standby guy,
Okay.
wouldn't you? I don't think you need chaps for somebody
I
standing
think
watching.
most of these trees are already down, so nothing's gonna fall
Yeah,
down on them.
well, the most
So,
dangerous ones, unfortunately, are the leaners.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I think it's important
I mean,
that,
the second person could just stand back
Yeah.
from
Well,
something that might fall, so.
well, I'm just wondering if they might not take turns, like, one of them cuts it down, and then the other one is dragging some pieces away, and says, here, you cut up the rest of it. I mean, it would just be kind of awkward if they didn't all have what they needed to be able to do stuff.
So,
Right, size.
it would be my suggestion that they both have full equipment. And I can see where, if they're cutting a tree together, they're both not gonna be operating the saw at the same time. But on the other hand, in terms of fairness and equity, you don't want one to think, well, I'm just kind of the assistant, and this is the guy I have to turn to. And there may be occasions, where something's just laying on the ground and it's too big to move, and one of them wants to cut in half and put half on each side of the trail, that they have that, and they have the ability to do that. And it's kind of an opportune time to take a look at the sheets that I passed around to all you guys, and that's our budget sheet. So there's two sections to that. One is our carryover, and the other is the appropriate budget. The appropriate one is on the landscape page. You can see that we've spent just a bit over half of our money, so we have plenty of money, Andrea, for you to buy all their equipment that they need. And I'm happy with you, if you're willing to do it, doing the shopping. You can do it locally, or I've been buying things from this company called A.M. Leonard, which is kind of, they own Gardner's Edge too.
What's it called?
A.M. Leonard, and they have a lot of safety equipment that are geared towards the industry, that you could, I'm sure you can find the chaps and everything you need. The other thing I was wondering too, I can't recall the last time I saw Isaac and Peter side by side, but I don't know if what would fit one would fit the other anyway. So,
the helmets are adjustable, so that.
right, and the chaps are, Velcro and like a belt, and, I think John Lathrop is a smaller man and shorter than Isaac, but Isaac was able to wear his.
I was wondering if this may be kind of an off-the-wall idea, but if we get them a helmet or something like that, get a little decal saying Old Langell Space Steward, something that might be kind of fun. And so, and the other sheet is the carryover that we had from the previous year. And there's two items on it. Number 254 is the Ferry Road Refuge, and that money is basically,
Is it on here somewhere?
no, it's the next page.
Next
Did
page
you get
back.
another page, Devin?
It's on the other side.
Oh.
Yeah.
254 is the Wildlife Refuge, and that money is basically committed to have the pond and lake do one last spring this fall in the next fiscal year.
Okay.
And then the other line item, open space property stewardship, I would think most of that, I would say probably over 4,000 of that is gonna go to our mapping project. I think the mapping project and related expenses are close to $4,000. We spent $130 on, I'll pass this around for you to look at. A new map to go into our Who's Who brochure, which has been quite popular and is out of print now. So we'll have made copies of that for our Midsummer Festival I think the two changes, only two changes are in there, is Horseneck Creek Landing, and we added noise, a noise, note to the Ames open space. Then the other thing that we have to do, and we can get into this as mapping, is signs as well. And one last thing that also kind of related to another topic is Nancy Merrick flew a drone over Bartholomew, and she picked up some very good footage, all in little bits and pieces, and it needed to be stitched together, and you need to use ArcGIS Pro for that. And I talked to Steve Perry a bit about that, and he can do that. I don't know what he's gonna charge us for that, but I hope we can do that, and he'll give us a better sense of what's going on with that property. So, we do have the money, and as I mentioned, we have sufficient monies in the stewardship account, so I have no problem. Peter takes an extra hour to walk out somewhere with Isaac to cut a tree or whatever. I think it's good training, and I'm fine with the extra hours if that needs to be.
And also, I think I need to coordinate with Russ and have you also speak with them about using the Avenza for the mapping.
We'll come to that.
Yeah, let's get into that later.
Okay, I'm just thinking,
Mhm.
okay, perfect.
Did you have anything else?
I'm not sure where on the agenda to put this, but the Hike Your Happy Hour, or,
Yep. Sure, let's talk about that.
so we had 21-ish people, 21, at the, thank you, McCulloch, open space, and, Evan did a really nice job of speaking, although it was suggested that whoever is speaking, we have a megaphone. Because you're spaced out, and, I mean, short of a microphone, I mean, people love hearing what you and Mike and anyone else has to say.
Most of the places aren't as noisy as that, because you're right next to the highway.
Yeah, but even if you I mean, I don't think that's a big expense if we're gonna have it. I don't know if we wanna, or roll up a piece of paper or bring a cardboard but it's on all of them. It's a running comment.
And that's what everyone seems to comment about. Or the fact that if you start speaking and there's people still trailing in, that they, don't hear the beginning.
Is there any type of electronic
And that's
device that
something
could
we
be
deal with
carried
on
with
our
a phone or
as well.
something?
That's the comment.
Like
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But even if it's a tube from I'm serious, it's just from a toilet paper, it's enough of a projection. But more, a point for me, us as kind of coordinators, I did not want to pay, haven't been billed, and I have a meeting tomorrow, I think, with Leslie, but I was not happy about the appetizers at all. I could have paid for that by $30 when I looked at what they served. The presentation was late, and I was late in getting there. I think we were late in getting there, like 20 minutes. There was nothing out on the tables. There was a few bowls, 2 bowls of mixed nuts, and Leslie comes in with this tray of massive sandwiches, like 8 sandwiches, maybe 12. They were so big, and they serve tea, let me remind you. Tea sandwiches, and you do hard-boiled, you do deviled eggs, cucumber, dill, salmon, you take a piece of bread and you make a nice sandwich, cut it into 4 corners that are triangular so you can bite into them. It's not a meal, it's an appetizer. The sandwiches were huge. And the grapes, you go pick up a grape and you pick up the whole bunch. I mean, that's catering 101. This is a restaurant. I mean, I was shocked. And, so we're meeting with Leslie. I'm trying to tone it down. I do.
Are you bringing someone from the process?
Yes, Mary Devens is
Okay.
coming, and I discussed it with her already. And I wrote a nice email just saying thank you for the kickoff and the welcome. We would like to review and preview the upcoming ones. But if we are paying, then I feel we have a voice. And for $100, that was affordable. And we could either do it ourselves or not pay, and they could provide something and we won't say a word, and we just do the happy hour. But if we are paying, then I think, and I know that it's delicate, more delicate for the Land Trust because the Kitchings are very generous sponsors and great supporters, and I don't want to diss them, and I know the idea came from
Chris.
a relationship with Chris and Amanda, and we had spoken about expanding to other restaurants and giving other restaurants and local places a chance and shot and just make it more communal. And Chris took objection with that, as if it's hers. And anyway, I don't want to ruffle feathers, but I think we're a business too, and we're the town.
So did you were you presented with a bill or not?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'm not asking for it.
You guys haven't been getting the bill, right? You guys haven't been getting the bill, right? Last year?
We've needed to affirmatively ask for one, and it's been given to us after that request has been made. They do not present it to us automatically for whatever reason.
Yeah.
The other thing you might want to mention, I don't know if anybody else experiences this or what their thoughts are, but I can never figure out their drink prices. I buy a beer, and it's a draft beer, it's one of their featured happy hour beers.
It's $8,
And.
right?
Yeah,
12?
it-
Not 5.
Yeah, I mean, they add tax and they add tip to it, and it doesn't seem like a bargain, I'll say that.
Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
happy hour, that's the whole point. is
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least this time, I know, I don't know if I noticed it before, but the sign actually said surcharge and tax included, or added, but it didn't say what the actual cost was.
Hand them a 5 and walk out the door.
The other thing too is, again, you know, I don't wanna criticize their business model and what their expenses in are, but they had one gal who was a bartender,
It's
and
always
she was
understaffed.
struggling with the cash register and everything. It took quite some time to get your order.
Oh, it's inconsistent.
There's at least 10 entries to buy a beer.
Yeah, so,
Well, so beer was just
Yeah.
$5, you wouldn't have to say a round number, $5.
and
Get back
you,
in five.
and you put down a $5 bill,
Yeah, and then you just go.
or you have the signature drink in a pitcher already made.
That's a
And
great
you,
idea.
and you pour it into a glass with 4 ice cubes, so it's, you know, you have it, you know, measured where it's fair for both, where they're getting some profit and you're not getting all ice, for $8. Yeah. So she's all, yeah,
Well,
I'll try to be,
the one thing I would mention too is just from our perspective, you mentioned that the Kitchens are supporters of the Land Trust. For us, we have been sharing one of our properties with them for somewhat of the benefit of the guests as well. And the flip side of that is theoretically, they're supposed to be maintaining the yellow trail, which runs from their parking lot to about where the junction is with the main trail and the Barbizon Oak. So,
Wasn't that,
Yeah, I
the
thought-
deal we had with them,
I thought,
because they did rebuild the bridge across the little ditch there. There was a drainage ditch that, I think was built back when there was a barn there. And they had cattle but so that was rebuilt. Whoever was doing the lawns and, you know, so they said they'd have their guys keep that trail mowed. But, the last time I was there, they were doing the invasives. It was.
That was April.
Seemed like it was mowed, but it was early.
yeah.
No, I don't know whether, I haven't been back since, so I don't know.
Yeah, so.
okay. Do you know where you're planning for June, Karen?
Hatchet Hill.
Yeah. Which is pretty close to where we were with you guys.
Yes, yeah, it's off of, Hatchet Hill. Yeah.
All set? Okay, so that kind of leads us into, it's a nice segue, Andrew, having brought up the Hiker's Happy Hour to, the next agenda item, that's the Bartholomew Open Space, which should have been the location for this past happy hour, but there's some flooding and some bridge issues there. So I went over there today, but I was short on time. We didn't have to, I didn't hike in to see where that missing bridge is. Where are we at with that? Can you tell us, explain a little bit about what was planned and why that didn't work, Andrea, in terms of the bridge repair when I was away?
So Peter went to check out the property before the hike and, found the second bridge after what Logan built was dammed up, as a beaver dam somewhat. Not so much of a dam there, but above that there was a dam.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know which one we're talking about.
yeah, I walked in there, took some pictures.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're still on my phone. They're, the second bridge is pretty much gone. The beavers are starting to use it to make a secondary dam. They had one about 15 feet, upstream that, if that ever went, the whole thing would go again. But it looked, I think it measured, it was probably about 17, 18 feet across, so it's a little bit more than one beam across to make a bridge. It's like a big project. It was interesting, though. I think that trail isn't how, it's kind of boring. I've never hiked it, and I walk by it almost every night. It would be interesting to bring a trail along the water so that if you went in early evening, you might see the beaver moving around
So
and
if you
doing stuff.
swipe right 5 or 6 pictures, you'll see the bridge as it was in April. And then Evan, Fred, and I, Fenton and Peter went out, and we were looking to, open it up a little bit and measure and see what kind of crossing we could make. And it would require a similar but simpler structure of I think 18 feet, is that what you said?
Somewhere in there, right?
18 to 20 foot, logs, hopefully from the area there, going across with some, crosswood.
Would a bridge like Logan did work in this spot, like, too?
Yes, but that would take a little bit more than I think we're able to do between now and September, when the next hike is. We are coming into summer, people aren't gonna be as available, and, it's gonna, and there's not that evident number of trees on the property when
I was looking for some.
when the state was, hitting those trees along 156, I was, like, Fred was gone, he had a truck. Greg was gone, he had a truck, and I was like, but it may require bringing in wood, and I think, Evan, you said that planks would be too unstable, even if it's on, rolling flat logs or something?
You mean the cross pieces?
No,
Oh,
the main
yeah,
big ones.
no,
You thought it would be too unstable and floppy in the middle because
yeah. Yeah.
So a structure like that, but maybe more using, rather than the telephone poles, logs, long trees, but to find two that are somewhat symmetrical may be challenging, even though there's some out there.
So it seems like there's like, I guess, I can see two alternatives, and they may not be real alternatives, because I'm not familiar with exactly what's going on, but one is to build some type of bridge, and the other would be reroute the trail, as Bill kind of suggested.
And if it's rerouted, you could go around, you wouldn't then go over Logan's Bridge. So it's a bridge to nowhere, sadly. And you would end up going around where it bends to go to the bridge, you could bend it to the right, and you could go along the backside of the, where the Beaver Deceiver is. Didn't we go over there too, or is that with Fred?
Actually, it's a little trail there too, when I walked in there, it's nice, it's interesting at least.
Oh, all right, well,
One alternative is, and I know
could be, we could do that.
between when we had the Girl Scout contemplate building a bridge for us and when we actually had Logan on board, Amanda was talking to Al Bond about having him build a bridge. So that would be a kind of a third alternative, is to go to some vendor that could, I'm not sure how he would get in there any better than we or Logan would be, but have somebody actually provide the materials anyway and get them as close to on-site as possible and use those materials.
I know the name, but I don't know Al Bond.
He's kind of a farmer in Whippoorwill.
He has an excavating business, and does road work, and, he's been very helpful to us, Emily and me, when we had animals, because every once in a while, animals don't live that long, and somebody dies, and you have to bury a horse or a donkey or something, and so Al would come over with his backhoe and dig us a hole.
But could we think about rerouting? Yeah, does it go to Logan's Bridge, or?
Well, your families leave that, and a lot of times, sometimes they're more interesting, come back a different way.
Yeah.
If you looped it around on by the Beaver Deceiver, and if you went in there in the early evening and beavers are active, it'd be really fun to see. It's rare to see a beaver, because they're usually at night.
I think it would really be cool. I think the trail is so short there anyway. If you could just make it kind of a beaver viewing spot, that would really be great, maybe.
Could, I'm traveling next week for about, can I put you in touch with Peter? To work that out?
Sure.
And maybe if you show it to him, then he could, and do you know what area he's talking about, or do you want to be a part of that, given your association with Bartholomew Evan?
Sure, yeah.
So while we're talking, let me interrupt for just a second. I'm going to pass around my iPad with 4 photos I took today. I emailed them all to you, but you can take a look at them. The first two are, the first one is the Beaver Deceiver, as it was this morning. The next one is the dam that's just upstream from that. And I took a third picture. It doesn't really do it justice. Upstream from that dam, there is a very large pond that kind of abuts the grade to the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 other pictures that show the culvert on Whippoorwill Road and the water backing up there, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Are they from you, Ann?
Share the wealth.
Are they from you?
So, we have,
Oh, my goodness.
have somewhat of a plan for the beavers then?
I think so.
Okay.
And this, so should we call in, not Mike, but his son or
Yeah, his partner there.
his partner?
Yes. I will get to that when we start,
Okay.
where we ready to move on to that.
Wow.
So the third picture, Greg?
Is this Whippoorwill or
Yes,
Buttonville?
yes, that's okay, so I'm passing around some images on my iPad. The first two show the Beaver Deceiver on Bartholomew, which seems to be working great. And it shows the beaver dam a little bit upstream from that, which there's a pretty substantial pond behind that beaver dam. I've gotten several emails from Ross Fogg over the last month or so, saying that he's quite happy that the wet area behind his house, that's part of our Ames, south of that walkway where the old bridge was, is filling with water. And he thought it might be beavers doing it. He was saying, if there's beavers, can we just leave them alone, because it's so wonderful that there's water there, and I get the mosquitoes and the other problems there. So I went and took, there's four photos there for everybody going around. So I went and as I told Evan, I battled the wild roses to get down to that culvert. There's no beaver activity. What looks like happened is a log drifted. It's horizontal across the opening, and it's backing up the water a little bit. The water's flowing through that culvert pretty freely. It's a big culvert. It's much bigger than the culvert on Buttonball.
Oh, here's a log. No, I was like not sure what I was looking at.
And so I don't really see a need for Beaver Deceiver in there for now. I'm a little bit apprehensive that if that log is moved from there, all that water is gonna go rushing through there, and Russell's not gonna be too happy. So I would just say, let's leave it as it is for now.
Well, I think it's encouraging as a neighbor who actually appreciates the beavers, because haven't we found beavers on Mount State Road that have been shot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody's been after them and, taken the matter in their own hands and decided to dispatch the beavers.
So Amanda mentioned having John Egan come down and take a look at our Beaver Deceiver. I will give him a call and try to schedule something. The beavers did build mud around the fence that protects the culvert, which he expected them to do. There's a couple sticks inside that fence. I don't know if they dropped in there, the beaver somehow dropped it in there, but it's running well. The water was really running strongly this morning.
Like a beaver cam.
And I can have, while he's in town, one of the advantages of a maintenance contract, which,
That water's very low on that Ames property, when I had actually initially asked where the trail was.
yeah,
And was it possible to maybe build a bridge? It might be relatively cheaper to do it with low water now, just in the event beavers come back in there, because you can almost walk to get your feet.
you're talking about that laneway bill?
To connect from where Pfeiffer is to Ames.
Yeah.
So that way you get almost across town trail.
Yeah, that's an issue. So Rob McCarthy presented that to us, and we have a member of the Inland Wetlands Committee who maybe can give us some advice about if we wanted to explore plains. How much specificity do we have to come before your commission, Michael, to determine whether that's a project that might be approved?
It's variable. I mean, if you're a scout, it's next to nothing.
So if you wanted to look into that, Bill, and were you interested in that too, Fred?
Yes.
I can send it to you, the info I have. Fred may already have this, but Rob McCarthy had a prototype for a bridge that could possibly work. And Rob's on planning, is he? Michael, is he?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if they'd have a role. And Russ Fogg also sent me a design for a bridge that I think was used in Scandinavia, and they both seem really interesting concepts. That would be great to run a bridge through there. There is state money available for that. I know the woman that used to run the recreational trails grant program quite well. She's the chair of the Deep River Land Trust. She's retired, and I know Kim Bradley, who now runs that grant program. There will be definitely state monies for this, and this is exactly the type of initiative that DEEP wants to fund. Something to build, connect trails and have longer trails that cross a town or whatever. So that would be a wonderful thing to look into.
It'd be wonderful, yeah. I don't hike too much down here.
You like long walks?
Yeah, I did like 8 this morning in East Rock of all places, but that would be a key connection.
Yeah.
It's been coveted by many, the idea, a lot of bikers, especially.
You can almost go from
Runners.
I think 4 Mile River, there's a little piece that comes over, and then it's a public road, the one that goes to that back property by Flat Rock, and then you have a little roadwalk on Flat Rock to get to McCulloch, and then probably up in McCulloch and then back to Ames and across, and that of course goes to the Old Time Inn, which I've been many times. And then from there, you can go to Big Y.
Greg, I feel like this kind of got put on the back burner because this came up about a year ago and we haven't, I mean, we've been busy, but.
Yeah.
So like what would be the next step?
I think that the next step would be to maybe you guys could touch base with Rob McCarthy, who was really interested in getting involved in this, and just come up with, I don't know how to determine if it's feasible to actually run something through. They're giving the designs they suggested, an idea of what it might cost, and then we could find, if we have a plan, we could see what type of permitting may be needed, and whether it'd be okay to run something through there. I mean, it would certainly be affecting wetlands. You'd have to put, I don't know, something.
Yeah, what comes first? Do we decide if it's permissible first before we get a plan or get a plan?
Yeah.
That's evolving, actually, because they don't read the regulations, the other members, and there's a whole provision for uses that are permitted uses as of right, which it's not one of those, but they're also conservation-related uses that are permitted under that same section 4, and that's what I've been arguing with these trail improvements, really. They're, provided they really don't have any significant environmental impact, they should be just approved. And we're on a roll. I mean, the commission has approved a number of them relatively easily with minimal information. The more structural stuff, then you get into liability. Might have to be designed by an engineer, because you don't want it to collapse or injure somebody, because it is on municipal property. So it's a little different than just a couple of poles that a scout built across these small, not.
If I remember, Rod's idea was using these machines, right, that have these, like, putting pillars down. So it was pretty significant.
Yeah, that's good, the more you disturb the wetland, you had a problem with a bridge at, was it Bartholomew that didn't get approved, or was it somewhere else?
Bartholomew, yeah.
So I don't know if that was personalities more, I've been not
I think it was
real
more
reg.
design.
Well, the design, I think the design, there were 2 designs, and one of them was approved, and the other one, it was the suspension bridge that was not approved. And that was, the suspension bridge was because it was so difficult to, as Fred and I found out, try to put a post in to support the bridge, roots and rocks, and it was, really did need a pile driver, is what you needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the more disturbance you have building a structure.
But also if the structure starts before the wetlands, that might.
I'm just not that familiar with that.
Yeah, it's interesting though, I've done some hiking in Maine and there's some pretty interesting elevated walkways. I wouldn't call them, I mean, I guess they're bridges, but they're more like elevated areas. And then you have places in Florida, but I'm not gonna hang my hat on anything in Florida. Right, but the Audubon Society in Florida has a 2-mile elevated walkway in one of their reserves. So, somebody's been in the wetlands, probably up to their chest.
And there's alligators.
And they're,
They're grateful all we have to deal with their beavers.
and bad snakes. But, the ones I've hiked in Maine are also on Audubon, Maine Audubon Society, trails.
Do you know anybody about Audubon who might pass along their
Well, I was
preferred
thinking,
technique?
who's the woman we asked to come on the commission, and she said she was too busy. She's the trails person for
Claire Payne.
Yeah. Whether she would give us some
She has,
insight.
Alex actually does most of this. She does like checking to see who owns that land and doing the
Okay.
easements.
Right.
Alex, we've done stuff with him before. He's the one that actually does the trail, builds the bridges and stuff
Okay.
like that.
If we could just get a consultation.
I
Do you think,
I know Claire,
do you think a design or so is what we actually need for a walkway? How deep do they have to go, how the footings,
Yeah,
gravel? Because to me, it's hard doing it without, I just go in with a post hole digger, bring a 4x6, drop some quick dry cement, and you'd be done.
yeah.
That's the plan, I mean, it's easy.
That would be, yeah.
so
And another good thing about getting a recommendation from the Trails or Audubon is, in the wetlands presentation, say, this is a technique that's been approved, and used by
Yeah,
blah, blah, and blah, and I think that substantiates our,
well, Connecticut Audubon does have, I don't know how many preserves around the state, and I'm sure that they've probably got someplace that
yeah.
built a bridge.
Well, and I wonder if, over at Stuart McKinney, if they don't have any kind of, I mean, they're common, so.
Yeah,
Doing it with sensitivity for the wetlands,
So, how about this? Well, I'll send, you and Fred the plans for the 2 bridges. I'll contact Claire and let her put us in touch with Alex, whoever thinks it's appropriate, that we can look there and say, hey, if this was on your property, what would you guys do? Could you build a bridge here? And since we have a little bit of money, we might even see if we can get an engineer to look at that. Does the town, who is the town's engineer that you and Amanda work with on
Tom Metcalf.
Is he still associated with the town?
I don't know,
Retired, or?
but I could probably have Don Gerber in mind take a look at it. He's an engineer, and he's actually building very large bridges, I mean, automobile bridges for the town line.
Okay,
So,
that would be great.
yeah,
So, that'll be a start, so we can just get a sense of, whether this is doable, and,
I think it's with the low water, it was opportunistic to not have to wade into it.
yeah.
I know a few years ago, there's no way
Yeah,
it would be
right.
hard.
so, I mean, that does bring up the issue to me, Phil, though, is the water comes back up, do you
How high
need to
is it
build,
big?
need to make your construction account for that possibility, or we need to do something to regulate the water flow, maybe put a deceiver in that spot, or to keep the water moving through, or, does,
Yeah, if it overflowed,
Yeah.
it'd probably be very rare though. Is that beaver deceiver patented? Didn't look like that complicated design.
yeah, I don't think it's all that complicated, though, they know what they're doing, and they have the equipment and skill to put it together. So, anyway, I don't wanna hang up on that too long. I wanted to mention, though, interestingly enough, we're getting some nice segues into topics. At Joan's request, I reached out to the conservation and said, they're doing a series of talks at the library And I said, we'd love to coordinate with you and do something about beavers in town. So this is a quote from the minutes of their May meeting. Collaboration with Open Space and co-sponsoring a beaver seminar. Conservation Commission would like it to include both the pros and cons of installing beaver deceivers, along with their limitations and woodland impact. B. Campbell will reach out to me. So it's interesting that they apparently have at least some members that are dubious about beaver deceivers.
Or beavers in general.
Well, I mean, the beaver deceiver allows the beavers to, you know, live in that area, so it's basically a decision, do you want beavers or not? It's, you know.
I wonder what the cons would be.
Well, back when he was on the commission, George James was he did not like beavers, and his tack was that they destroy a lot of forest. If you go on Whippoorwill and look into Ames, there's a lot of dead trees in there, and he thought that was damaging. On the other hand, if you look at some of the stuff Evan has written in our beaver signs, that's quite a vibrant ecological community there of reptiles and birds and whatever, you know, and over time, as Evan said, it evolves into a meadow, and, you know, it's just part of the natural process. So
When you look around this country and around the world, the number of places that people who realize the benefits of having beavers on their streams and wetlands, the people who are if you want to re-water the west of the United States and stop forest fires and water crises, get the beavers back. And England is doing the same thing, and Scandinavia is doing the same thing. Who knows? Maybe the Russians are doing the same thing but all over the world, beavers. The benefits of having beavers in your community is manifold. So it's on the other hand, you have a lot of people who are, you know, farmers, for instance, who have, over the last 200 or 300 years, have cleared floodplains where beavers used to be beaver meadows. They object to having beavers back because obviously it floods their very fertile fields. And
You should just grow rice.
civilization against nature.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, when Russell, we seem to be a traveling group, and when Russell was, I believe, he might have been in Italy. In any event, he was out of the country, so Ann and I talked to Steve Perry, our cartographer, and kind of accepted one of his proposals. And after going back and forth about having him walk with his sophisticated backpack electronic device, which is gonna cost us over $5,000 to do something, we got him down to a proposal a bit over $3,000, that we would provide him with electronic data for the trails. And initially, he was suggesting that we use the Garmin unit, and I looked into possibly borrowing one or buying one. They roughly go for about $600 for the unit that he was recommending. But he kind of surprised Ann and I, saying, hey, you guys can do it with Avenza, which is a free app. And I took him at his word, and he seems to be moving ahead with trying to capture data from all over. We actually met, in addition to talking to Steve, we talked to Emily Wilson from Yukon Clear, which is kind of their Yukon GIS headquarters. Emily was saying she could capture a lot of the trail data with LiDAR. Steve said, yeah, I can do that too. So apparently he's working on that, and I'll let Russell take it from there.
So I didn't speak with them, we had email exchanges, so, you've heard me say before, Avenza is not the easiest mapping tool to use. A lot of frustration after coming back from Italy, I spent 5 days figuring out Avenza. So I did McCulloch, 2 days ago. So I had all the new trails, and I sent it to Steve and said, is this acceptable? It's just perfect. So it's just the free Avenza app, it's not the pro. I made a few mistakes in doing it, and I didn't send it to everybody, but it's hard to actually, you gotta buy other drivers to be able to open the files. But you can open it in Google Earth, or you can open it in Google Maps if I save it correctly, which I finally figured out to do. So, yes, and I did McCulloch, and had to go back and forth, so I went all the way from Whippoorwill to Flat Rock entrances, all the way up to Tree in the Gap Trail, and that entrance on Whippoorwill, and crossed some of the old line land trust in the Allen Preserve, and included those in the map. So he will have a map that's got the new red trail, and he asked if he should keep the old red trail that's gonna close on the map. I said no, because we're gonna close it. In that email back and forth though, he also thinks he'll have maps for the 5 areas that we wanted to do. We just talked about Bartholomew, wants to figure out what we're gonna do with Bartholomew.
Yeah.
And he will probably only need pin drop information. I can do that easily. So I sent him a note, I haven't heard back. Are there any other areas that you need to be fully mapped by Avenza? If he gives me that information and he gives us the GPS maps he's doing, then we'll know what we have left to do. Everything that will come out of his work, and now that I figured out how we can get the Avenza into the Google Maps, and we can actually get all of that on Connecticut Trail Finder with minimal effort, once we have all the data. So I'll be able to work with those folks and do the intro, the data set that you have to write up for that. And then, I think by the end of the June, July, we should be done and have, I don't know if everything went on Connecticut Trails by then, but that's kind of the hope. We'll see.
Great, that's very exciting.
Wow.
Great job. Good job.
Well done, Russell.
Connect you with Peter?
No, wait till I find out from Steve. I'm gone again, but I'm here all next week. I'm gone the 27th to the 9th.
May into June.
Yeah, May to June.
Very good.
Europe again, this time to Portugal. But I think if he can give me the information of what he needs, I can have that all done before I leave, I think.
If
Not,
you
I'll
need,
talk
if you,
to-
if
Well, if
you,
not, I'll get Peter and Isaac and.
yeah, I was gonna say, if you need help,
Yeah.
please feel free to work with Andrew to call on them. Peter, should have Avenza, he took an Avenza course.
Yeah, he actually used Avenza to do some of the trail mapping.
Yeah.
Not mapping, marking, where he had to do work. So I know he's at least reasonably competent in it. It's translating it and exporting it and sending it is what I was having trouble with.
Did you see, Steve's email yesterday afternoon about Avenza Pro?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then his response to my question was, you don't even need Avenza Pro now, so. We'll see if that's true or not by the time if there's that much more data we have to connect or not. So,
Well, that
so
sounds
that's
great.
an update.
And
I'm hoping it's not a lot from what he said, because he's using LiDAR, he's using other, we use Avenza map and spread it out enough. Our trails are on it. They're little dotted lines, and it's from the LiDAR data. So, but they're not marked, where there's intersections, you have no idea where you are, like in Lay Allen versus McCulloch. And by the way, our map is incorrect.
Which map is
Current
that?
map. McCulloch, it shows going into Lay Allen, it's got the wrong colors of the Lay Allen trails, so if you try to follow the colors, you get quite confused.
Oh, no.
And then there's also a loop when you come in off the Whippoorwill on the yellow trail in McCulloch. I didn't even know it was there. So my wife was yelling because we just went in the circle. I said, yeah, we did. So I've got that marked. You can do a drop point. Go this direction if you want to get treated, if your ultimate goal is Tree in the Gap Trail, so.
There's still an issue that's never been resolved of exactly what the parameters of the noise, open space and what's the Ames is. I have an old survey that was done a long time ago.
Remember he mentioned that before, and
Yeah.
that might be the one we need more mapping done.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It may be that we may need to have, Dick Gates or somebody come out and look at that map just give us a sense, because, the one thing I note about that, if you look at the town GIS map, it shows that sheep's ledge is losing noise. And I have a number of documents that show that, the land trust and subsequently open space would bought the sheep's ledge parcel from Steve. So it's definitely his land and not Noy's land.
I think that's why he wanted the camera data from the town.
So, yeah, that's, do you want to mention that?
Yeah, so he had some concerns with the exact boundary lines of some of the open space areas. And he arranged with the town through Greg, getting back and forth. I'm not quite sure what CAMA data is, but it leads into the GIS mapping that the town uses. So he'll verify the boundary edge of our line on the maps.
So I just to amplify on that, I put Steve in contact with one of the Cronenfelders, the town assessor, and she also is the person with the vendor, which was together a GIS map on the town website. And she's been very helpful and cooperative in working with Steve. And I hope that we can work with her in the past. I know that in the past, there's been some open spaces viewed, the mapping stuff that we've developed as being proprietary. It was not an inclination to share it with Melinda. I'm not of that mind at all. And I'm happy with having, she can actually put up our trails on her GIS maps on the town site too, so we can have them available as many different locations as possible.
She's great. If you've ever had a conversation with her or needed to work with her in any capacity, she's smart, she's polite, she's effective. She's great. She's great.
I like Melinda a lot. She,
Yeah.
The project with us, that she's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was super helpful to me.
Yeah.
she's very smart. She not only does lime, full lime, she does lime, and she does a lot of training for other assessors around the state, which I think is a big asset.
Yeah, for sure.
Old Lyme is lucky to have her.
What is her name?
Melinda Cronfeld.
She's like in the assessor's office,
Yeah.
but she's really knowledgeable. She's just great.
So I may come back to the commission and when we get into the Connecticut Trails, and if there's some additional work there, maybe I'll ask for some additional volunteers and help. We'll see how that pans out.
So one thing I want to do is to get Steve's work done this fiscal year, and I think that will be done. But moving to Connecticut Trails is, I think, going to be mostly volunteer work. I don't know that we get vendors for that. If we do, it won't be particularly expensive.
I think we can use what he provides.
Pardon?
I think we can use what he provides.
Yeah. And did you see what I sent you from Emily Wilson?
Yeah.
So apparently there's two aspects to the info on Connecticut Trail Finders. One is actually the maps, and the other is kind of a narrative, which probably talks about what the properties are.
Right, and then the trail, the makeup of the trail, is it rock, is it steep, is it EDA compliant, you know? I don't know if I'm not quite sure who would identify that,
Yeah.
and say it's either right or wrong, because I don't think we know enough to say if it's EDA compliant.
I'm pretty sure nothing is ADA compliant.
I would doubt very much that any of our trails are.
Yeah.
That was something I looked into about, seeing if we could have an ADA compliant trail to the overlook for the Barbizon Oak. And
So you could probably make tree in the gap compliant to the pond.
yeah, that would
Pretty
be
flat.
one. Or the other thing would be to maybe make Horseneck Creek compliant to where we have our viewing spot. But
Yeah.
having what you might term informally an accessible trail, going from that to an ADA trail is
Yeah.
quite a bit more detailed in terms of the base you need for the trail and everything else. I remember it being pretty extensive.
So the visual path around their property is ADA, certified, and so they have certain specs, because we had looked into that when we were looking at Bartholomew, making a cross path to Bartholomew. you remember, and it was very expensive what they had to do.
Other than treeing the gap, though, I don't think there's probably anything that's wide enough that you could actually maybe horse that creek.
So the last thing I'd mention, and I'd like to do this fiscal year again, is, and Steve has got that as part of his project, is he will give us the materials for a sign. And so I think this might be an appropriate time to look at our kiosk and find out what exactly is on the kiosk. Do we need to have any paper on there to be handed out anymore? Do we want to get a big aluminum sign with his map for each property? Do a nice sign, we have the money for it this fiscal year.
QR code so
and-
people could
Yes, exactly.
copy.
Yep, yeah. So, would you have time to,
I think that's in his proposal. Remember you said the size of the PDF files?
Yeah.
I'll have to look at that again.
yeah,
I'll have to ask him about that.
well,
And also just.
I was looking at the sign at Bartholomew Day, and I was thinking to myself, it would have been nice if you brought a little tape measure so I could measure how big those signs are. I don't know where they came from, but they're kind of paper signs, plastic, but
Yeah.
I try to go for an aluminum sign, it looks much sharper, I think.
Okay.
The other thing I brought Bartholomew is the little sign-in book. It's been there, who knows how long, yeah. It's
So hopefully he'll send that information this
sealed together.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention for this is this is an opportunity for us to pinpoint, points of interest along our trail, where we have the two beaver observation areas, or the Ames Caves, or whatever, so.
So for example, I did a few, like the erratics you mentioned, the large glacial erratic, some of the stream crossings, made a comment on tree in the gap when you go uphill, muddy when rainy, those
Yeah.
kind of comments I put in.
Okay, great. So do you need any help in terms of like, any advice if we wanted to all kind of send you, hey, what about this on that property, we should highlight that? Would that be helpful, Russell?
I think so, if you know that somebody's like, hey, by the way, between them, the stewards, you and I can figure that out. This is an interesting feature that I think we should put as a marker, on the maps. And I don't know how he's gonna present the maps, whether those will be there, or if you'd have to have the electronic form and be able to
I'm not
highlight the
exactly sure how he's gonna
yeah,
present it
so,
either.
again, until he sends us the stuff, I'm a little bit of a quandary in terms of where we go exactly. The good thing is though, Avenza free, it works, and actually,
Yeah.
if we ultimately need to do additional mapping for Connecticut Trail Finder, as long as you do the Avenza map, no, I don't export it, that's actually sufficient for them to make the maps. for
Well,
Connecticut.
feel free to reach out to him, Russell, and say, I'm curious about what the final product is gonna look like. You have something you've done for Canton or whatever, that's gonna be like ours, can you show me that?
He said he was on the last map, whichever that meant.
Okay. It's interesting, because I was under the impression that he said he was really busy this month, and he would give us that month to data collect, and then he was gonna get into it in June, so maybe he's jumped ahead.
I think he was more pleased with the data he could find than I thought he was, or thought he anticipated. So I think that's part of it probably.
Did you do the Canton Land Trust?
Did he what?
Did you do the Canton Land Trust properties?
Yeah.
Yeah, the president's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you his proposal, Bill. And he, I think references about half a dozen land trusts he's done work for.
Okay,
yeah.
A lot of connections.
Michael, I know when you were on the commission, you were interested in rural pools. Is that something, are there any examples or any?
I have mapped, the vernal pools in Champlain North.
Okay.
I have to relearn it and make them points of interest. But, I kind of redid the survey this year. I was working with the Conservation Commission, but Gary Gregory and I had a falling out. So, I've got to reconnect and get some teams together. But on Champlain North, I found there's a wetland training pool on the Red Trail beyond, Barbizon, what's left of the Barbizon Oak. And that has wood frogs and spotted salamanders and, marbled salamanders. And I got marbled salamanders again this year when I did it. Then there's another pool, still on the red, that would be walking away from, or towards, Hillwood West, the parking area there. That's more,
What's the condition of that?
it's, the hydrocycle's not as good as the training pool near the Barbizon Oak. That means it just dries out faster. So we have to have a wet year to be successful. That's better for.
No, I meant the access in that, from that, location into, is there, maybe we're not talking about the same thing, the access,
If you come in from, the Barbizon Oak Trail, it's fine. If you come in from, Hillwood West.
yeah,
And if we have a lot of rain, like 2 inches or 3 inches of rain we had this week, the entry trail was a little.
why is that need for bridge?
Well, it doesn't need a bridge, but I think just a little elevated,
Walkway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of get past the kiosk,
Okay.
from the road to the kiosk. I'm also wondering, do we even own the land that the trail's on off the road? I haven't done, I don't know, that question came up in my mind. Whether or not that entry trail right off the road is actually on town property, or is the town property in a bit near the stone wall? It looks like it's the two adjacent property owners that we kind of walk up, one of them. But that's another issue, I wouldn't worry about that. It could use a little wood, almost like we did on, the high school project.
Right.
Kind of this little low,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you need a couple of inches off the ground, kind of,
For the whippoorwill.
only when it's wet.
Is there what you would call like the classic or perfect example of a vernal pool, Michael, that you could indicate, and we could maybe just a vernal pool, QR code, something like
I'd like to think about that, you know, because
I have a question about how close, like, if we point vernal pools out to people, are we endangering these pools? Are they gonna like trample around them, or like, is there a way to kind of, like, maybe that's not.
anybody's standing in the anthills, but
I don't know.
I would be nervous about it. I wouldn't want to, I mean, it's public information, theoretically, if we posted it, I would be concerned that people might be looking for collectors could be looking for marbled salamanders because they aren't that common. Spotted salamanders, I mean, theoretically, you need a permit from DEEP to collect them. Even as a kid, you can't collect tadpoles legally anymore, even as a kid. But the only other thing I found fairy shrimp.
We funnel a lot of foot traffic to these sites, is that potentially endangering the conditions?
Yeah.
Just comment on the points of interest.
We were just down at East Rock today, and a lot of, we stopped, there were signs, it must, I don't know if there's Audubon signs, but it's on a bird migratory thing, and it's have different bird, a little plaque with colored, different birds and so forth. It didn't seem to be, I don't think we were disturbing anything by doing that, but it wasn't for vernal pool, but.
Right, I mean,
They stay away from the mud. But
well, yeah.
They're not being impacted now, and that's something we would think about. I mean, obviously, we've taken about 50 people to I call it the training pool, and though they all saw the spot in the marbled salamander larvae, so.
Are there fairy shrimp?
The fairy shrimp are in the pool near, Hillwood West,
Okay, but.
which was the first time I've seen fairy shrimp.
So, in your training pool, that there must be obligate species that are keeping the frogs and salamanders coming back
Yeah, well, there's a lot of green frogs in the training pool, so I think they're consuming a lot of the wood frog tadpoles.
No.
So one last comment on the points of interest. What you could do is take any current map and mark the location on it and just send it to me that way. Easy enough, we can be sure to position it correctly as time goes on, but, so there are things that you would suggest that we do as points of interest or items of interest.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it, easy and quick.
Just as did we, include Horseneck Creek? Are we doing?
No, that's not on the proposal, I didn't ask him that.
Okay. We should probably have just a little, I possibly lost in that tiny trail, description of that. What you see on there, because we have that observation site we put up, and,
So
the little,
you could probably do that in the events of now.
Yeah.
Okay.
we can talk to him, and we can pay him a little extra, just for one small page for that.
Okay.
Which kind of leads into, to the Rockfall Foundation. I had written to Harbor Management about the sign. I would say, let's go ahead with the sign as is, that everybody looks at. I think it was a great catch for you to bring that to our attention, Joan. And the iterations of the sign, so I think it's perfect to go ahead with that. We still have a little bit of money. That sign is roughly $100, is more or less.
Well, it depends if you want one or two.
I would say let's go with one. We can't really use that money for a location out of that property. 'Cause
No, when you would say put two up at Horseneck Creek, is that what you meant?
where would the second go?
I don't know, I hadn't thought about it, I was just looking at the bottom line. I think it's like, I can't remember offhand, but it was really two for the price of one.
Yeah, I would say, go.
Not that,
I'm just wondering if, and I haven't been down there in a long time, but, there's an end of the path that's closer to where the proposed dock is eventually gonna be. I mean, I would think that something near the proposed dock would be good, because eventually, if this dock gets built, there's gonna be a lot of foot traffic there that, may never wander down the trail.
I think there's a lot of variables with that I'm a little bit apprehensive for. I know that one of the things that has been expressed to me repeatedly is that, as part of this, it's interesting that DEEP seems to have dual priorities. And one of the things that's expressed to me repeatedly is that they want to make fishing available wherever possible in a location. I mean, that was the case with the Lieutenant River Bridge, and that's, I think, certainly also the case at Horseneck Creek. And on the other hand, I deal on Gateway with deep people saying, stay off the marsh. So, I mean, there's a certain conflict there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't remember the sequence of events, but the, what was that, the road down there by, Watch Rock,
Yep.
where the state was actually, I mean, we wanted the
Yeah,
state
Calkins
to,
Road.
Calkins Road,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
wanted the state to sort of
We
be.
do have a sign up there.
Which we do, but, if they're gonna sort of assert authority and enforce that aspect of their regulations, it would be deeply vexing to me that they would allow people to trample the marsh next to that dock just so they could go fishing.
Especially, I think the case that I think of is that, I think that's the one area that has been cited as a potential rare and endangered species habitat, and therefore, it has it's elevated to a higher protection status. And, Yeah,
So,
I mean,
I don't know, do you feel like we might be ruffling some
Well, I'm wondering, one of the-
feathers to use a bad metaphor?
Let
One
me,
is $90, the other's $216.
Maybe what we could do is get two, but only put the one up, and then once the dock is up, maybe we'll see a need to put one at the end of the dock, or depending on how we
Yeah.
read it.
That's-
One is $90, two are $106.
okay.
So
Yeah.
two,
Economically,
Let's get the
If you
two.
don't use it,
Right.
Let's get
and
the
it's
two.
an 8 by 10, so that's just a little more narrow than this.
Yeah.
yeah, like Joan says, and we'll have it in our back pocket if we need it,
Yeah.
if the dock goes in.
Yeah.
Always put some-
just as a 2 cents, I hate to think of as signs as litter, but, you know, too many signs on a piece of property just,
Absolutely.
I mean, it begins to look like, you know,
But
Times
8 by
Square.
10, 8 by 10 is, I think, pretty innocuous, you know? If you've got one at one end and one at the other,
Yeah.
This is two.
I think.
Point well taken, yeah.
I wanna just do a little quick, background discussion, because Christine had asked, and I think, it would be helpful for all of us just to have a sense of what's been going on at Horseneck Creek. So roughly 20 years ago, that property was given to the town by what was then part of environmental protection, it was just death back then. And it was given to the Open Space Commission. Open Space Commission was written on that document. Open Space apparently worked with whoever was with Harbor Management at the time, and it was considered not to be a viable boat access location.
Charlie DeLinks.
By the then Harbor Management people.
Yeah.
And then it kind of got lost. And to be honest with you, when that property was raised as, hey, why aren't we using this property? I really had no idea it was open space property. And then there was an issue between who would basically have management of that property. Harbor Management wanted to have a boat access. Amanda Blair, who was chair of Open Space at the time, felt that that needed to be studied to make sure that there wasn't negative environmental impacts. And it got to be a little bit of a back and forth. And what happened was that the committee was formed. And you want to talk a little bit about your committee's deliberations, just very generally, Fred?
So the committee was composed of Harbor Management, Open Space, and Inland Wetlands, and there were
Just interrupt. Fred was the chair of that committee, and he was, he could be a Secretary of State for the United States.
Yeah, they're diplomatic.
there was some spirited discussion. So that's good. But yeah, we met for about 9 months and trying to hammer out the pros and cons of all these ideas. I mean, bottom line is it ended up in a kind of commitment to share the property, so Open Space taking care of the upland area and giving Harbor Management the blessing to go ahead and pursue this dock, which is for launching kayaks, not so much fishing. And so that's where it stands. But I think Harbor Management did really have this vision of having a park there and more of a park-like setting. And so, anyway.
Fred, is there any parking there? I walked in here.
There's a little bit of parking
It's
there.
about 2 or 3, well, I would say 3 spaces,
Yeah,
maybe 4 if you have a small car.
Yeah.
and if you had a kayak, it's a lot.
You may have to redo the parking signs that were there. I don't know.
Yeah.
So the plan or the thought was that when the town submits its application to DEEP and there's approval to actually construct a dock, and money is found for that project, that there would be a little minimal impact roadway leading so you could go drop your kayak off and come around and park. Michael and I went
Frankly, that's a little lame, because if you're a kayaker, you can certainly portage it
100 feet.
Well, that's the initial plan, you know, I'm not sure where the status of this. Michael and I went to a harbor management meeting and said, you know, we would like to go walk that property with you and see where you envision this little roadway to drop off your kayaks would go. And so, once we know that and know, what some of the disturbance of that property would be, that we could then have some gravel put down and build a more proper parking lot. And we never had the opportunity to do that. We were to meet with them, it was canceled and we did reschedule.
The other thing, if I can add to that, is, we had to go to the zoning commission to put in the fence. We were done forever to put in the fence, and the fence has been in, almost a year, and the dock is still yet to be, application to be submitted. Trails are in, we, spent money on the nature trail assessments and stuff, so our activities are done, so I'm gonna make sure that, anybody, when they do, if they ever get the approval, they're gonna have to go to zoning with a detailed plan on the circle and where it's gonna be and where the parking is. And I'm sure that our neighbor Amanda will be watching and commenting on that. So, I mean, we had to go for the fence, and the zoning signed off on it. The reason you have to go to zoning is any activity within 100 feet of the coast is in the coastal area management area. So any activity on the upland, is under the control of zoning. And so grading and the parking and the turning circle is much more significant than putting in a split rail fence.
Is it, I don't remember the regulation, but I thought the CAM zone was 120 feet.
It actually extends 1,000, but they look at 100.
Okay.
It's, that 100 feet is, and it's all, it's not a large lot, it's only 3 acres, half of it's marsh. And so, you don't get lost on this trail. You probably can always see the car.
At least in the winter.
Right, is the holdup deep with the dock? Is that?
They're trying to do it themselves, and I don't know what the holdup is, but
I've been told that, that like us, harbor management is a word of volunteers, and some of them are have jobs, and they're trying to fit it in as best they can. I'm not gonna comment on their time frame, that's their issue.
I don't think that, from my one encounter with, when Mike Barnes, had the deep person that he was working with on his own property over on, 3 Mile River, that guy seemed to think that there was no problem at all, so, I said, well, there is an issue with rare and endangered species. He said, oh, ospreys aren't, the guy, ospreys aren't endangered. And I said, yeah, but what about saltmarsh sparrows and, some of the other, it's funny, I remember when that legislation was put in, that there would be, DEEP would have a whole, rare and endangered, area of people working on keeping an eye on it, and they mapped the whole state with,
Yeah,
blobs.
yeah, it's a blob, it's in the blob.
It's in the blobs.
just to comment, DEEP does not deny docks. They don't deny docks. So it'll be approved, and it'll be approved with conditions.
But it might have to be bigger and more expensive.
And it depends on how vigilant the neighbor is, because once the application is submitted and a legal notice is posted, someone can get 25 signatures to force a public hearing And that slows the whole, I mean, if you do that, can slow the whole process down a bit. They will still issue the permit for the dock, but it could take 2 years, depending on how much, if there's any opposition. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. The other thing is that if we do have money and if we are concerned about having rare and endangered, certainly plans. I mean, we have access to a botanist, but now would be the time to look for the plants.
Let me get to that in a second, so I want to just.
Can I just, circle back to the signs before we go on to something?
Sure. We're not leaving the property yet.
Huh?
We're not leaving the property yet. We're still talking about the property.
Okay, well then, you could go on, I just wanted.
Okay, yeah, do we have, I have a, about an 8-foot 4x4 in my garage, that's
And
ours
so
too.
does Mike, but I'm wondering, is that gonna be overkill for a sign that's this size and not rather than a 2-inch, metal?
You're free to buy something at Beard or wherever, we have the money.
I
Any
have
help?
some metal posts, fence posts, those green metal fence posts with holes in the back, so you can put a bolt through and put a sign on it.
I think that would be the least intrusive.
Yeah.
And the easiest
Kind of like the one in the marsh.
At one point, I offered to
to install.
harvest some of our cedar for posts. So that offer still stands, and that would make a very natural,
Yeah,
it could be,
better than,
Like this big?
it can be a smaller,
But we use cedar posts around the Barbizon Oak, remember, for the information signs?
that would be better than a metal post.
And the ant
champagne, south,
sign,
cedar,
all
so.
cedar.
Yeah. So I'll take you up on the cedar if it could be
Sure.
small, to accommodate this, and that way Chris, it's a thin aluminum, but he may need to put a hole through it.
Yeah, we can drill a hole through it, so maybe like a 3-inch diameter would be about the right, so you can tell me what size you think is appropriate, and
Yeah.
we'll find what's appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
So getting back to the property, the last thing I wanted to mention is obviously, there was some news relatively recently about the ordinance, that was suggested by Harvard.
Oh, now I need a chocolate.
I happened to run into Jim Lamppost at a Lime Art Association fundraiser Friday night, and he asked me, what did you think of this ordinance? I said, what ordinance? And he wrote to me Monday and said, here's what's proposed, what are your thoughts? And I wrote him a letter that apparently both he and Martha released to, Elizabeth Regan, who's moved from the London Bay, to the Lime Plant. And I also sent an email to Jude Green explaining, this is what I gave to your 2 peers on the Board of Selectmen, and it was, I've said, I'm happy that all 3 selectmen support our involvement in that property.
Yeah.
Including Jude, who's important because her husband is on harbor management, or is it harbor management, Michael?
He was, I haven't been to a couple of
Okay.
meetings, but
Harbor management and then, zoning.
Well, I think resigned from zoning.
Well, now, yeah.
He's on zoning, but he's on harbor management.
Yeah.
So that's it, and as far as the property goes, and one of the reasons I think it's kind of special is that, as part of this project, we had Juliana Barrett, who's a PhD from UConn, and she is their coastal forest salt marsh specialist for UConn. And she walked through that property with me and Michael, outlining things that we could include on our guided trail walk, and she said, this is really an amazing property. She said, there are no invasives on this property, none. And so, and the interesting thing about that,
native.
Can't say that about Prairie Landing.
Just you wait, Henry Higgins.
That's funny.
the interesting thing about that, there's briars and stuff like that most people would say, well, this is junk, but, it actually plays a role. And I remember, it was in Nell Twining, when we were talking about that, and Michael Barnes might have said, let's cut down all these briars.
She said he didn't use the word briars, he said, we need to get rid of the prickers. I'm saying, what do you mean? And, well, there are pricker bushes all over, and we need to get rid of them. So he was gonna go in with a tractor and mow all the stuff, and actually did, and I don't know, I think Amanda called the police, and so.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
So,
They have an interesting relationship.
but anyway, that was the level of understanding about what coastal forests, and I think in one public meeting,
So anyway, it's a really special area. So we do have a little money left in that grant, so the two things I have. One thing that Michael alluded to is that when Juliana visited us, she went through the forest pretty carefully, but she didn't really walk on the marsh. And we could have somebody look at the marsh and determine what plants are growing on there. It's a tidal marsh, not a salt marsh. What plants are growing on there. My thought would be, I'm sensitive, maybe not like everybody, but if the dock is practicable, I would use it. I'd love to have access to the road. So if we find something, I don't want to basically be seen as putting up a deliberate impediment to the dock. But on the other hand, you want to protect something that's in there that might be endangered or valuable. So that would be one option, is to have somebody come in and take a look at that, a biologist, Chris Mangles or whoever. The other option that someone suggested to me, and I'm not quite sure what the parameters of the property are, and how much land would be basically, I'm trying to think the direction, the southeast of where the dock might go, but I noticed that, Amanda Blair has a osprey nest on her property that we see from our house, and my wife loves to watch that. And the last 2 springs, there's been battles among osprey about who was going to occupy that nest. We're getting to the point where there's more osprey than nests, and putting up an osprey nest in that property might be an interesting option to look into. I'd just like to know how close to the dock, how far away from the dock would it have to be before it would be disturbed, but that might be something to look into.
Ospreys build nests on.
Yeah,
On the,
you have to worry about that.
On the top of the railroad bridge.
yeah, Greg, you know,
Moving railroad
one
bridge.
thing, there's an osprey nest up right off Linda Marsh's property that has not been occupied for like 4 or 5 years. Eagles took over.
Yeah.
And they will
Yeah.
not nest there,
Yeah.
so that's, but if they're using the other one down near you, they probably would.
But I don't know the gentleman, the person that has a house next to Linda Marsh. I saw him out there when I was kayaking one time with a giant John Deere lawnmower right underneath the eagle nest. We were getting quite agitated. And then this past year, I did not see their nest there.
It's way in the woods now.
It's, okay,
back
it's
in the-
still a mid location, yes.
It's still there
Yeah.
now.
That's absolutely why there's no ospreys in that nest.
Yeah, no, ospreys will nest, I've seen an osprey nest on Fisher's Island with a pretty busy road right underneath it. They built a nest on one of the, utility poles going along the road, so,
Country mice and city mice.
Yeah, that's the eagles. The eagles are obviously an issue, and the other issue, not to get into it in any details, is my wife has become friends with some of the osprey watchers, and this one guy had been watching a nest for like 6 years, and last year, was it a great white owl?
great horned owl.
Great horned owl.
my
Killed the mother when she was nesting with the little ones.
Well, that would happen with that other nest up there, where
Nature.
they knocked
Yeah,
the babies right off.
Found we have an osprey nest in front of our house, and I found an
Supposed to kill the father, what?
No, the little ones I can see, but that.
too much conversation.
Yeah,
Did they have
they're pretty,
It's the competition, they don't want to be competing, I think, with.
Well, great horned owls are sort of the ultimate predators, in this area. I mean, they'll eat anything, I mean, including, weasels and things that could bite you back.
Anyway.
okay. Well, let's move along, but see if I can find some info about an osprey nest. Ann, do you want to talk a little bit about your tree cutting?
Sure, super quick. First of all, just, to follow up, I guess people probably know, but we did in fact get our building permit. Have it right in that binder. So we have a permit to move forward with, you know, any of the activity that we have been proposing at Ferry Landing. I don't know how long these things, do they expire? 5 years? Okay.
Yeah.
5 years, they're good.
I think it's fine,
Yeah, all right,
and it can be extended.
Yeah.
great. So, we've got all our, ducks in a row there. And, after many misfires of communication and struggling to, feel like the, arborist that we had selected was gonna be responsive and, just sort of feeling, you know, not very comfortable about moving forward with them, we just decided to move forward with Wilcox, who was the second bidder down. So I think that the original guy was 1,000 and Wilcox was, 1,300 or something. So it's really not a giant leap in expense, and, you know, I feel pretty comfortable that they're gonna come when they say they're gonna come.
Jason used to do a lot more work with open space before, we had Peter out in the woods with a chainsaw.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing though, is that there is tree work to be done there that Peter and Isaac, are perfectly capable of handling. So, you know,
With chainsaws or no?
probably with a chainsaw be easier. I mean, Isaac took care of one thing with a hatchet, which is, you know, obvious that that's how we went about it, and it's fine, and dealt with the situation, but I think there's probably like 6 to 8 small trees, like, you know, 4-inch diameter, 3-inch diameter, that should come down that are either dead or are threatening some of our planting.
Yeah.
I
I
know
would-
to them, I will copy you.
Yeah, I can come down there and,
Are they, when they're cutting trees, are they painting the stump with herbicide?
well, I don't know that they've had to cut for this purpose down there before, but yes, they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thing, we'll have to get some herbicide for them to use
Yep.
and make sure that that's how they do
Because
it.
you're talking about the Atlantis trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other ones I don't think are Atlantis.
When you cut them, do they resprout?
Yeah.
Yes.
Atlantis certainly does.
Yeah, I know catalpa trees are, we used to have them on my family property, you can't kill them.
If they
Special gloves, Sam? Since I'm buying
A lot of
equipment,
trees
special
resprout.
gloves?
It's a,
No, I mean, you know, they're gonna have gloves on to do the chainsawing,
Right.
so that should be fine.
they need a mask,
Just Roundup, basically, it's not like.
but they need a mask when
Sorry?
they need a mask.
A mask, okay.
What kind of mask, like a COVID mask?
And then N95,
Okay.
Oh,
It's a COVID.
the COVID mask.
Yeah, COVID.
What's the herbicide you use?
the N95, some of them come with a little box, thing, but
Roundup.
just, okay, N95.
But if you either squirt it on, or paint it on, I think Tractor Supply has a gizmo that you can fill with Roundup, and then it has a sponge, little deal and.
So I need to get some applicator?
Applicator, a herbicide applicator. Or you can just take a jar and a little paintbrush and paint it on and try to do it on a day when it's not too windy. But you don't wanna use, I don't think you wanna use a spray bottle or
Okay.
something.
Good to know. So, we're scheduled with Wilcox for June 11th.
Right.
That's that.
So, moving on, Joan reminded me, and I'm glad she did, to include Midsummer Festival on there. We are all set for, I presume, pretty much similar location where we were before. And are you guys doing something yet, I'm sure, right?
And I will ask the land trust to borrow a tent again. Okay?
And I believe they provided us with tables and chairs, so, I will take care of the printed material they hand out. I don't know, we want, if, what we have, I think we probably have some of the whistles and things we had last time.
Yeah,
We have, 5 whistles.
but
We have lots of beads, lots of
Great. Wow.
What is the date again of the,
It's usually late July.
Okay, last week of July.
crayons, coloring
Okay.
books, lots of beads. I mean, not coloring books, but coloring pages,
Papers, yeah.
Oh, Andrea's traveling show.
Yeah.
huh?
Andrea's traveling show.
So I could give you the whole box.
One of the things I was wondering about, and
These are
I
for Peter,
if
for
you
the
can
yellow trail.
find a supplier that can give them to
I mean,
us
the red
at
trail.
relatively inexpensive. Get like little tiny seedlings, maybe 50 seedlings to hand out to young, environmentalists.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any idea who might sell those?
There are lots of nurseries where you can buy those.
You guys think that would be a good offer for
I
him?
mean, if we can't get ceilings, we can do like a little like those little packets, those
Yeah,
little flower packets that have just,
Yeah,
like,
that's what Andrew.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Flower, seed packet.
yeah, seed packet. Like, yeah, I just didn't see it, but that's perfect, I mean, I think that's perfect.
The one that I love, it's actually a sheet, and you plant the sheet.
Oh,
Like, there's no, oh, they'll go away, or whatever, you just put the thing in the ground and water.
But if there's no
Glued to
date,
the sheet, feet,
They're embedded in
don't worry about it.
sort of like
carrot
that.
pots or whatever,
Oh, you're
you
Have you
can
read
plant
about
the
the-
pot.
this what?
Yeah, the,
I misunderstood, don't worry.
letting eelgrass,
Uh-huh.
gluing the eelgrass seeds to clams.
I don't,
That
I
would-
have.
Oh,
I've given you the bag. Are
Clams
you
bury themselves.
setting up?
I guess so.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Let the clam do the work.
I got one of those, wildflower things.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it came up all week, so you gotta be careful, type of plant
So-
you're planting.
We have a rough committee. I missed the last meeting, we discussed it,
For this summer?
yeah, Christina and
Christina's leading it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you said you were on the phone, remember, you said,
So I'm very participatory, so leave it up to you guys to decide what if you wanna go with the seeds or trees or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
And the only other thing I was gonna mention was the website, and I was gonna mention that, I apologize, I haven't got to it because I've been involved with other stuff, but we will get to that. That's basically all I have for the meeting today. Does anybody else wanna bring anything up or any other topics?
Up until.
Be all set, so,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second it?
and
Cut you off.
6:49.